From Vassar College, this is Conversations at the Salt Line with Wesley Dixon.
On this episode, a conversation with Leslie Jackson Jehuli.
Hey everyone, it's me, Wes, and welcome to another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. Today, I'm here with a dear friend of mine and Vassar Board of Trustee member, Leslie Jehuli, class of '83, CEO and president of Jehuli Studios. Thank you so much for being here, friend.
Thanks for inviting me. This is really fun.
Of course. Well, I'm happy to have you on campus, as always, for our fall board meeting, and happy to get to talk to you a little bit. So I want us to have a couple of different conversations today. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Partly, I want us to spend some time getting to know you. I happen to have the privilege of knowing you, but not everyone does. And we are trying to find ways to humanize and demystify the role of board member at Vassar. And so I want to have a little bit of a personal conversation about your background, how you got to Vassar, and what your life is sort of like now. Is that okay?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, you came to Vassar, I understand, from a place that may be a little bit uncommon, if you will, compared to the typical quote-unquote Vassar student. You grew up in both Texas and Oklahoma and came to Vassar from Oklahoma. So can you tell me about what it was like for you just arriving on campus the first day from a place that wasn't sort of on the coast, and Vassar maybe wasn't a common place for your friends and neighbors to go? Tell me about that experience.
Well, when I came to campus for the first time, I had never visited. It's not typical of what happens these days, where you take your child to many campuses and make all these choices. I just knew that I wanted to come here, and I was very lucky to get in and came sight unseen.
Wow.
But I was invited to a kind of orientation session with the people who were coming here from out of state, which I think was a great idea. So I met some really lovely people and some people who became good friends from then on, because we all sort of shared that special moment of discovery and appearing on site together.
It's funny that there was orientation at that time for people who were out of state. Now it's sort of a given that we have students from out of state. And of course, we have international orientation, but I don't think at all we have orientation for folks who come from not the tri-state area, if you will, right? So it sort of speaks to just the changing times and the changing demographic, if you will, of students at Vassar in a very cool and probably positive way.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you ever felt either in those first moments as a student, as a first-year student, or as a student over the course of your years at Vassar, as an outsider. Did you ever feel like you were othered in some way, either because of where you came from or for other dimensions too?
No, I definitely felt that at times. You may pick up a little bit of a Southern accent in the way I speak, but mostly it's sort of neutralized, I think. But at that time, when I first arrived, I probably had a little bit more of a Southern thing going on in the way I spoke. And just remember, being teased, not in a mean way, but, just being teased and having that be, called out.
Yeah.
I probably dressed a little differently because, where I grew up and went to high school, you never left the house without makeup on, and everything was very matchy, And then when I looked around at the fashions on campus, I just remember, the Dalton girls that seemed to sort of float across campus, and, the kind of clothing and skirts that they wore. And I thought, well, that's just different than what my style had been. So that was one of the things that really happened as a female, I think, on the campus for me.
That's interesting. So fast forward from that moment, maybe 3.5, 4 years later, as you're preparing to leave Vassar, you're graduating Vassar, and you've gone through this sort of experience that I'm sure has tons of different narratives and stories as a part of it. But who was Leslie on graduation day compared to who Leslie was on first year move-in day?
That's so interesting. It was just a tremendous period of growth, and I always point to the opportunity that I had to live abroad for my junior year. Much like I came to Vassar sight unseen, I went to Trinity College Dublin sight unseen and lived and stayed in Europe the whole year and traveled from there. So I think the travel bug kicked in. I had really never traveled outside of the country as a high school student, and got a chance to do that when I was here. And I just had a much clearer sense of myself, and I'm sure I had, a bit more confidence and a sense of accomplishment too, because adjusting to the academic demands, having gone to a public high school, being in classes with people who had been at preparatory schools, I really felt that difference, especially in the freshman year. But after I got through the freshman year, I started to get my ballast, and I found that I was able to do what I needed to do.
That's amazing. You mentioned the travel bug that you got while at Vassar, particularly when you were studying abroad in Ireland. And I just want to transition a little bit to your year, sort of not right after, but soon after graduation from Vassar. I know you have a master's in international affairs, and have done tons of work pre sort of Chihuly Studios, if you will, in international settings. So can you just sort of reflect on what those years post Vassar were like for you, particularly in this international, with that perspective in mind?
Well, I knew when I left Vassar that I wasn't finished with, with college or learning opportunities. I wasn't ready to go into graduate school right away, and I did travel and explore, and I ended up moving out to the West Coast and lived in California and moved around to some different places, and found myself in Seattle in about 1985. And after being there for a couple of years, at the time you had the beginnings of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and you had Gorbachev and Glasnost and Perestroika. We also had the Goodwill Games, which was featuring a lot of Russian athletes, and there was an arts and culture piece of that which I volunteered for, so I had a chance to do that. And I was just very excited about what could happen once the wall came down and once things started to open up. So I jumped in and started studying Russian. Did 4 years of Russian and got my degree in Russian studies in the Jackson School, nothing connected to my name, but the Jackson School of International Studies. And I just imagined that I might be doing something in politics, I might be doing something in diplomacy, definitely would be doing something in the arts, because that's always been a sort of a strain that's continued with me. And I ended up doing a variety of things, from making a film that was broadcast in Russia and the United States about the elections at the time, and I took this team of Russian journalists, who were also comedians, if you can believe it, to the conventions and set up interviews for them, and it was called Democracy in Action, and it was a somewhat humorous look at our election process. So that was really fun. And then, of course, working on the Goodwill Games and the arts part, traveling to Russia with a group. I was invited to help a group take business people to Moscow and St. Petersburg in hopes of creating more joint ventures. So I helped organize those trips, and attended and facilitated those trips. Then doing my thesis, I didn't have to go live in Russia, but I wanted to go experience that. So my thesis was on the growth of independent media and the effect that it had on the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So I interviewed radio stations.
Oh, wow.
And my professor and advisor thought that was great, and I self-funded it, and I had a chance to go work at Moscow State University and help students think about potentially going to school in the States. And I worked in a PR firm, which actually was doing the spin job on privatization, and it was partially funded by some groups out of the States.
I'm sure.
But it was a wild and woolly time. It was a dangerous time, and a lot of chaos. And Yeltsin was in office. Gorbachev was there when I first went to Russia, and Yeltsin was there at the end. And a lot of violent things were happening. People compared it to Chicago in the 30s, and So it didn't feel like the safest place, but very exciting.
Sure. Oh my goodness. So chaos, 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 but learning from all that chaos. You mentioned earlier that even in that phase of your life, art was sort of a through line in terms of interest or things that drew you to different kinds of opportunities or experiences.
Yeah.
And so I want to just pivot a little bit to another sort of bucket of our conversation, of course, which is what you spent a lot of your life doing for the past probably 2 decades of running Chihuly Studios, which has to just be the most dynamic and incredible experience for you. So I have a few things I want to talk about in particular, but let me just start by asking you to sort of tell us about Chihuly Studios, sort of how you got involved, sort of how you would pitch it, how you describe it, just sort of set the stage for us as we enter into this part of the conversation.
Okay, well, I'm actually 31 years in relationship with Dale Chihuly. He was not my husband at the time, but he became my husband, and I started working with him on a project called Chihuly Over Venice, and I was the project director, and we took teams of glassblowers to 4 different countries to make work, experimental work, innovative work that we would then take to Venice and install and hang chandeliers over the canals of Venice and in the piazzas of Venice. So right now I'm actually working on a project to celebrate the 30th anniversary of that this coming spring in Venice. So I'm thinking about that a lot. And I had worked in film, as I mentioned to you, so we made the first HD TV film that had been done, which has been seen many times, and we made our own documentary film alongside that. So I think that project is really probably one of the most exciting things that I've ever done, and it was really jumping in the deep end of the pool because I didn't know about glass blowing per se. Right. I hardly knew Dale. I was getting to know this whole team, and it was just this, incredible adventure as we went to Finland and Mexico and Ireland and ultimately, Venice to
that
do
international
the work.
bug is always rearing its head, right?
Yeah.
That is so cool. So that's how your sort of role or relationship started, if you will. And of course, Chihuly has, it appears to me, grown and expanded and sort of just created tentacles everywhere sort of since that time. And I just am curious sort of how you have thought about, the business of art, obviously, right? You, I would say, have played a critical role in sort of the expansion of the Chihuly business beyond sort of just the
Right.
art, right? And obviously there are tensions between sort of art and commerce, or sort of the integrity of the artistic vision versus the sort of desire potentially to become an enterprise, right? So talk me through how you've thought about that, how you've navigated that over the course of these 31 years.
That's a big one. Well, I have a very ambitious and very energetic artist who just wanted to do things and was just adding people to the team left and right without any real structure around it. So when I started, nobody had a job title, and nobody knew to whom they were reporting, and I think Dale just assumed everybody's reporting to him, and that worked when the thing was a lot smaller. So
Right.
I think just out of necessity and not knowing what I didn't know and not having a background in business, just out of, survival, I started to kind of play the role of bringing structure to this creative process, letting Dale dream and do what he wants to do, but at the same time creating an organization where everybody's accountable. And sort of learned that the hard way, as I said. But over time, I built the structure, and it's worked, and it's really helped to kind of create the housing for this amazing creative spirit that continues to express itself
Can
in
I ask a
all
question
kinds
about
of
that?
ways. Sure.
So it's funny because it makes perfect sense that you sort of try to create this structure around sort of this spirit of entropy and creativity, right? But I could imagine that those who were part of that system of entropy before the structure was created, it might feel new for them to sort of feel like they're being managed or
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of constrained, right? So tell me about some of those rubs or growing pains, and I think those are some of the salt lines we're trying to sort
Yeah.
of explore, right? The where creativity and structure meet, hopefully in a generative way,
Right.
but maybe not always. So tell me about some of that.
Well, I mean, again, as I said, I was new to the team, and there were people around Dale who'd been working with him for
Sure.
a long time. So they were just sort of used to doing things the way they did them, and that all, like I said, it worked out fine for a while. But what ended up happening is it sort of felt like there were these little fiefdoms, and people wouldn't talk to each
Splitting.
other, and there'd be these groups, and they all felt like, well, Dale said that's okay, so I'm doing that, and I'm over here doing this, and of course Dale said that's okay, and there were just risks and issues coming up all the time. And so I think it was, first of all, I had to really convince Dale that something needed to shift. And, I sort of reminded him of the fact that he really didn't like doing the business. He was actually very good at it, especially in the growing early phase.
Okay.
But he didn't like to be in a lot of meetings. He didn't really like, the structure. And I said, why don't you let me build the structure and back me up, because it's really important that you back me up
Right.
and not undermine me or go around me or anything like that, that you and I are on the same page.
Right.
And I'll build the structure. So we have, over time evolved an executive team, management team, and everybody else under that. We have about 58 people full-time.
Wow. Incredible.
So it just created a little bit of a sense of calm, and I think for those who were sort of resisting in the beginning, they began to see the value in it.
Right.
And then, of course, there was turnover and hiring of new people, and I find that it's a constant effort in sort of refining and defining your systems.
Yeah.
Bringing new people in and bringing them into the culture and having that work. So I told Dale that, if he would step out of the business side and let me do it, that he could give me a grade in a year's time. And I've gotten an A
Every year. Probably not dissimilar from how you performed while you were at Vassar and other sort of academic settings you were in. You mentioned culture, and I'm just curious how, and maybe it's changed over time, but how would you describe the culture of Chihuly Studios, and how have you worked to maintain that over the course of your leadership?
Well, again, I think it's communication. When I started, there were a lot of conversations that were going on that, didn't translate, that I didn't even realize, and there were assumptions being made. So I think the effort around culture is always just to create opportunities for people to communicate their difficulties, their challenges, and to also tell you what's working. So we spend a lot of time doing that. We've had a meeting recently where we asked everybody on the management team to, without even necessarily putting their name to it, to ask the big hairy questions or the things that were bothering them or keeping them up at night. And a lot of that tends to come down to legacy, what happens, when Dale is not making art anymore, or if something happens to him, or if something happens to me, what's happening with the business, what's happening with the foundation, and just trying to meet those questions, very directly and share honestly where we are.
It's so funny because you obviously can't see my paper, but the next thing I wrote down after this question was the question of legacy, and sort of what success looks like for Chihuly Studios in the next chapter, which might mean Dale not making art, Dale not being present, you not being present. Like, how do you all think about the future of Chihuly in whatever way makes you all feel most fulfilled and happy?
Right. Well, it's interesting because we did start a foundation a number of years ago, and that particular foundation is what we call a pass-through foundation. We put resources in, and on the other side of that come gifts to various arts. Basically, it's artists, arts organizations, and health, mental health primarily is our focus. So we sort of started dipping our toes into what it would be like to have that foundation and begin to define our goals. And we've been really happy with that. Some of the organizations that we've partnered with, we've been with for over 10 years,
Right.
you know, and when there needs to be a change, we can make the change. So that part has worked out really nicely. What happens with, you know, all of the artwork and the business side, it's much more
TBD,
complicated.
yeah.
Because you know, we're looking at all of these different models for how the business could maybe move into a foundation, you know, like the Newman, I don't know, Newman Zone. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Just, there are decisions we don't have to make today, but
Right.
there are sort of structures that we can consider in the meantime and begin to really work on some of the challenging questions about ongoing creative output. And so we're not a Tiffany. We're not going to keep making Chihuly into the future. Chihuly is making Chihuly.
Right.
And at the end of that, we'll be able to finish any projects, any things that he has designed, put a stamp on. We can build those things out. We can make them and do that. And there are certain things that we know will always happen, which
Right.
we want to have happen, which is the educating about the artwork, about Dale as an artist, and doing exhibitions in galleries and gardens and museums in perpetuity would be the goal.
Absolutely. I had a question about that last thing you just mentioned, because it feels like for me, and I'm always somewhere, as you know, I feel like everywhere I go, end up seeing, because now I know you and know the art really well, I'm like, oh my gosh, Chihuly's there.
You send me a
Chihuly's there. I
picture.
send you pictures, right? Domestically, internationally, always somewhere, right? And so I'm curious how you all have thought about that. How do you sort of decide where you want to go, who you accept to sort of partner with as you're thinking about exhibitions, installations? Is there sort of a rubric or sort of a framework by which you all think about that?
Yeah, I think there are some, you know, guiding principles. I mean, Dale really developed this entire body of work around gardens. So we've done something like 22 gardens. We love to do the gardens, but we'd love to do more museum shows. So when we look at the garden shows, we look at, well, have we been there before? Because we prefer not to do repeat. Can we open up new audiences by going to somewhere such as we did with Adelaide? And I was just proud of the fact that this Adelaide, which is mostly publicly funded, the garden, created a really robust and creative marketing campaign. They were able to get all of their public officials on board. They made a substantial investment to make it happen. And they ended up having 1.4 million visitors in their garden. So
incredible.
That makes us feel really good. New audiences, all ages, experiencing nature and experience the art in nature. So it's wonderful when an organization like that decides at the end of the show that they want to keep several pieces. So those become the legacy pieces, and it's a bit of Chihuly that stays in Adelaide.
Always there. What excites you about glass, and what makes glass such a special medium for art?
Well, you have to come out to Seattle and
I
watch some glass
have.
blowing. Did you watch glass blowing when you were there?
They had in
Oh, you
the
did get to
truck.
watch some.
They did some like demonstrations for small
Okay,
things
you
in the
did a
truck.
little bit of
I
that.
did just a little bit, but I'll do some
But
more.
in our studio, it's
I haven't been to the
totally
studio.
different
I've been to the museum, not the
scale.
studio.
Well, so you've seen it. But I think what's so exciting, especially about Dale's work, is the scale. I mean, he's pushed the scale of these parts and pieces beyond what anybody had ever imagined. You know, the use of color, the use of silver, the use of gold, the experimentation around parts. So there's always R&D going on in the studio. There's always something new. And Dale himself just said when he picked his medium that the glass was just this unknown and that it had so much potential. And I think we still feel that way. And, you know, the school that Dale started, called Pilchuck Glass School, north of Seattle, near Stanwood, Washington, is now 55 some years old, and it's one of the most renowned schools for all types of glass. So casting, etching, painting, blowing, neon, etc. And so that's a summer program, and people from all over the world come there. So we've really built this big community that goes from, Oregon all the way up to BC, but in the Seattle area, you've got, and Tacoma area, you've got Tacoma Art Museum, you've got the Museum of Glass, you've got Chihuly Garden and Glass, you've got the school, and you've got probably more people living and working in the medium in Seattle area than anywhere else in the world.
That's incredible.
So that's exciting. It's got a life of its own. And right now, while I'm here, we're having the Pilchuck auction back at home, which sadly I'm missing.
Yeah.
And we're having Refract, which is a yearly sort of celebration of glass and studio tours and that. So we're constantly sort of feeding that community and enriching ourselves with the interactions that we get to have with people from all over the world.
That's so cool. I have two more sort of quick topics I want to talk about. And one is just, we talk so much about your experience with Dale, the partnership that you all have both in your marriage, but also in the business of Chihuly Studios. And I'm just curious, in art, of course, in the glass, has sort of been central to both your professional life and your personal life in some ways. And so I'm just curious how you think about, I guess one might say, differentiating yourself and sort of having an identity that you feel is your own or unique to you, just in the mix of all these different things that are co-created and shared. But I would imagine you do have and want to maintain some sort of individuality. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about, my love of music. So I grew up playing flute and piano and singing, and I've always been involved in music. And for 25 years or so, I've been involved with the Seattle Symphony and the Benaroya Hall Music Center. I'm a emerita chair of the symphony, and I'm chair of the Benaroya Hall Music Center. So I continue to go deep in the things that I love, and the work that I did and the learnings that I had being the chair of that organization for some 9 years really fed me with things and tools and ideas that I could bring back to the studio. So, and I just began to think about my role as also an artist, a lover of music, but also as a philanthropist. And then, of course, my interest in mental health and that very deeply felt desire I have to help people in terms of destigmatizing that work. So these are channels and areas of work that are very much my own. Of course, there's some writing that I do, and more that I would like to do in the future.
Perfect.
So those are the things that inspire me.
Thank you. And I want to sort of just pivot to sort of our last bucket of conversation, which you've intimated several times, which is your interest in mental health. And it's not lost on me, of course, sort of the connection between sort of art and the healing sort of potential of art, and sort of the desire for healing for those who have a variety of mental health issues or struggle with mental health in a variety of ways. And you have been very open in many ways about how mental health has shown up in your own personal life in myriad ways, and have even made some incredibly generous contributions here at Vassar to help our students in regards to mental health. And so I would love if you're willing to sort of just have you reflect on where mental health issues have shown up in your life and what has driven you to be so sort of invested or passionate about that body of work.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it really starts at home. And my mother was bipolar, but never clearly diagnosed or treated appropriately, I think. So that really showed up in my life when I was in my early teens, and very painful to watch her suffer, but also painful to see the sort of extreme changes that can happen, in your parent from month to month. Also periods where she had to be away for treatment, and there was just secrecy, and I didn't know what was happening. So one moment I've spoken about, because I was an ambassador for McLean Hospital around mental health, and I spoke about my 13th birthday and my mom not being there, and her sending me this rose, ring, and how that became a real symbol for me of my mom, but also of that loss and that pain. My brother, I lost and I did lose my mother to suicide, sadly, in 2003. And I lost my brother probably about 3 years ago from, I think, extended, issues around mood disorders, but also addiction. So with those things, and that deeply, deeply painful experience as a kid, I remember even when I came to Vassar how I didn't want to talk about those things. I wanted to start a new life, turn a new page, and move forward. But it kept coming back to me over the years. And it really started with me needing to do a lot of work on myself, my own healing, to find my own desire to live, my desire to be intimate, my desire to communicate, share my truth. And that's really been a journey. And then, of course, Dale, he's bipolar, but incredible success story because, when I met him, he really wasn't sticking with his treatment, but he had a diagnosis, and we were able to work together, find a way to communicate, find a way to get resources and help. And he has been just a real source of inspiration for me in terms of how, compliant he's been with his medications, how he changed his lifestyle, quit drinking probably 20 years ago, and how at 84 he could go to the studio every day and make art.
Beautiful.
So that's sort of the flowering of some of the painful things that I experienced in my family is living and working with my husband and an artist and seeing him, be able to be here for so many other people and bring so much joy through art to others. And I think that's why that philanthropy around mental health is also very connected to art and art making.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's how we heal.
Yeah, it's so funny. And I can say personally, as you know, we have shared a mutual friend and colleague who, of course, ostensibly struggled with mental health issues. And it was so calming to sort of have someone like you to talk to, because you have such a unfortunate depth of experience with a variety of mental health issues and challenges and loss in that way. And so firsthand, I can say how powerful it is to have someone who's so committed, sort of informed, and sort of just available to sort of be a part of a community with you as you're thinking about and dealing with others who have mental health issues. So thank you.
That means a lot. Thank you.
I definitely mean it. And it's so interesting because, sort of like when we talk about mental health and talk about people, of course, people are humanity. And it's so funny because it seems to me like the glass and the glass making is no different sort of than the human making, right? And that I'm sure you've, of course, thought about this before, but the glass is so delicate and fragile, sort of like humans, right? But also strong and resilient and sort of transparent in some ways, right? And so it seems to me like glass can be a very helpful metaphor to think about the human condition, how we can sort of be all things, right? We can sort of exist at the salt line of delicacy and fragility, but also strength and beauty and perseverance.
Oh, wow. That's really beautiful.
Well,
I love thinking about it that way.
Oh, well, I'm happy I could contribute that to the conversation.
But when you touched on, the gift that I made through the campaign to Vassar, one piece of it was a legacy gift to set up a endowed fund to really help connect students with different modalities in terms of mental health. And I know that you know this, but it's really between the ages of 15 and 25 that so many of these mood disorders show up.
Right.
Also, experimentation with alcohol and drugs happens in that time. And that's why that fragility is really there when a student leaves home for the first time and comes on a campus. I happen to have good support and a wonderful roommate, but we had some losses when I was at Vassar, which we really didn't talk about. So now it's really about early detection, right? Early diagnosis, finding that multiplicity of forms of support that we can do, and I think we can save lives while opening up conversations that are difficult to have.
And one of the things, I know you know this, but one of the things that I'm most excited about your gift is that your gift has enabled Vassar to be able to provide, where necessary, intensive outpatient care for students who are experiencing sort of acute and sort of chronic mental illness in a way that does not disrupt their studies.
Right.
Because for so many students, their time at Vassar is sort of a safe place, and it is sort of calming, right? And the need, unfortunately, to have to leave campus sometimes to attend to their mental health is also disruptive because it's taking them out of this environment, right? And so I am so grateful to you for being able to enable our professionals here at Vassar to provide students with that opportunity if they need it, so that Vassar can continue to be a safe place for them while they are attending to their mental health.
Exactly. And I'm so thrilled that so many other alums have really connected, and this has resonated with them, and we're getting more support into that fund. So it's amazing.
Thank you. We have to get you out of here, so we have 3 quick student hot seat questions to finish our conversation. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one is, if you could sit down and have dinner with an artist, living or deceased, who would it be and why?
That's great. Let's see, who would it be and why? Well, I could answer that with many, many names.
I'm sure.
But today it would be Georgia O'Keeffe. Because she actually taught at Canyon College, which was near Amarillo, where I grew up, and then spent a lot of time in the Santa Fe area where we have a place and where I love to spend time and find it very healing. So I would love to go with her to Ghost Ranch and have some tea and watch the sunset.
Oh, I love that. Sounds beautiful. Second question is, who has been one of the most interesting or surprising patrons of Chihuly art?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I can talk about Becky Benaroya, who at 102, living in Seattle, continues to support Dale and his work, and has made a gift toward this project we want to do in Venice next year. Continues to give to the symphony, continues to show up at concerts and events, and encourages others to give. She was so funny. We had a lunch where we honored her at Seattle Symphony. It's called Benaroya Hall, after she and her husband years ago, their name on the building when we opened in 1998. But she sat at a lunch where we honored her, and she stood up and spoke beautifully and told everybody there that it was time to open up their wallets and give. You can't take it with you. You will never miss it. It'll make you feel really good.
Yeah,
so
I love
that was
that.
so great.
Oh my gosh, 102. I
hope you could meet Becky Benaroya one day. It would be amazing.
Let's put it on the agenda for when I come out to Seattle.
Super classy, amazing woman.
Oh, I love it. Last question is, what is your favorite part of being a Vassar board member?
Oh gosh, just the challenge of wrestling with so many issues. If I think about, the last 6 to 8 years, what we went through around COVID, what we're going through now in terms of a lot of the conversations happening around higher ed, and just to be right in the center of it, working through these issues and understanding them and discussing them with really smart people and with people like you and the incredible professional team that Betsy's assembled around her. It's just always deeply inspiring and deeply, deeply challenging, because, Vassar people are willing to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
We're willing to say, there's a way through this. Yeah. We don't know what it is, but together, through conversation, through, sort of poking holes in old arguments, we might be able to come up with something.
Absolutely.
New.
Oh, that's so fun to hear.
It's great.
Leslie, it's such a pleasure spending any time with you, as you know, and I know we'll have some more time, but I'm happy we had this time today.
Me too.
And just to sort of close this out, one of the things that's striking to me is that, just you and your embodiment in this conversation reminds me that the business of art is really the same as sort of the humanity of art, and they're sort of one and the same, right?
And
people and relationships and love and care and sort of community and teamwork.
Teamwork is so fundamental to glass blowing, and I love that metaphor as well.
And I will always be happy to be on a team with you,
Me
Leslie.
too, you.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. We'll talk again soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.